A widower bought an abandoned house in a remote village. He went down into the basement and gasped. Stefan Hughes didn't really plan on moving to Ohio. He just decided to do it without giving it much thought. The doctor said the young businessman would benefit from the change of scenery due to his health condition. Stefan's health was getting worse, and living in the middle of a concrete jungle didn't help. He chose to buy a house and a small piece of land in Ohio to start a different life. Charles Butler, who used to live there, died 2 years ago, and no one has lived there since. He got it for almost nothing from an old man's distant cousin. The man couldn't wait to get rid of the house, so he gave Stefan a good deal for it. The house itself was outside of the city and next to an empty farm that might have belonged to Charles Butler's late friend. The road to the house was made of dirt and was in bad shape, with a lot of holes in it. Because of this, Stefan had to drive his Chevy as slowly as a turtle moving over a dry canal. There isn't even a road, Stefan thought. I guess I'll need to get an SUV. Stefan was the kind of person that didn't go to these kinds of places very often. He felt like a pioneer who had just found a new place on the map of the world. Stefan's Chevy was fully covered in dust, which made it almost impossible for him to see anything through the windshield. He wouldn't have been able to drive without the wipers, which had been on non-stop since he hit the dirt road. Stefan was glad to finally be able to see the shapes of the old farm buildings, animal pens, and rusty water tanks that were in front of him. What a journey! Taking a bottle of water out of his bag with his free hand, Stefan said, "I can't believe I made it." He pulled into the yard, parked his car by the fence, and went to the house. Stefan had to take off his shirt to keep from getting heat stroke, as it was so hot outside. Stefan carefully walked inside the house and looked around after barely being able to open the front door. It looked pretty comfortable, even though no one had lived there in a long time. There wasn't any of the confusion that you usually feel in a bachelor pad apartment. The house had been emptied for a long time, but everything seemed to be where it should be. Stefan noticed the thick layer of dust and spiderwebs on the wall. He was thinking about all the work he needed to do in the house as he went from room to room. Soon, the man was lost in his memories, thinking about how carefree and happy his youth was. Because Stefan was the only boy in his family, he always got lots of love and attention from his parents. He always went to see his grandma, whose house was by the river during the summer break. From morning until night, Stefan rode his bike and took shots of everything he saw in the area. His family did this every year until he started college. Once he started school, he didn't have time for going anymore, so they had to stop. Even so, Stefan still went to see his grandma every once in a while. 1 year ago, the businessman's personal life wasn't going well. Stefan's wife left him for a richer guy far more successful than he was. The worst thing for Stefan was that he knew the man that his wife was seeing, making the entire betrayal even worse. The businessman already thought that his wife only stayed with him for his money and didn't love him. But after Susan broke up with him for someone else, he no longer had any doubts. Stefan's state of mind was very painful after his wife betrayed him. The man turned to a bottle of booze to feel better, which wasn't the best choice. He hadn't been in many relationships before, so he wasn't used to how painful it was to break up with someone. Because of this, Stefan took his divorce very badly and tried to get rid of the emotions that were bothering him with drinking. The businessman shook his head and walked around the house a few times before stopping in front of the basement door. Stefan wasn't sure that Charles Butler had been keeping there, so he went down to the basement to see what was there. The businessman went to the door that led to the basement and found that it wasn't locked. Besides that, he could see a dim light off in the distance that seemed odd. I wonder what's going on there, Stefan thought in a worried tone as he duck-walked down the stairs. The man couldn't turn on the light because the wiring in the basement was broken. Stefan used the flashlight app on his phone to light the way so he wouldn't trip and fall. He had only gone a few feet when the strange light downstairs just went out as quickly as it had come on. Right away, his mind started to wander to scary movies he used to enjoy watching as a kid. Even though Stefan never thought of himself as a wimp, he didn't want to be in that basement any longer. Now he knew someone or something was down there as he heard rustling sounds coming from below. As soon as Stefan heard the sound again, he tensed up and pointed his flashlight at his feet. Then he heard a scream that was hard to make out, and something he didn't see well ran at him. Stefan tried to back up, but he fell down right away. Stefan yelled in pain from the fall. There was total silence in the basement for a short time. Then a scared, childish voice asked, "What's going on, sir? Why are you here, and what are you so scared of?" Stefan then realized he was talking to a scared 7-year-old boy who was hiding in the corner. "Oh, why am I at this place? Why do I sound so angry, kid? This is my home. I bought it a month ago," Stefan yelled back. The businessman looked around and realized that his little friend probably came in through the window. He then went down to the basement to see what was going on there. Since Stefan's initial shock had already passed, and he had no intention of punishing the boy for breaking into his new house, the boy appeared terrified and was obviously awaiting a harsh response from the new owner. "Why did you go down to the basement? Are you looking for something or just having fun?" the businessman asked with concern. The man sniffled and then looked at Stefan with a tired face. The little guest didn't know what to expect from the new house owner yet. He finally got the nerve to say, "I was hungry. I just hoped to find something tasty. The late Mr. Butler had his own apiary and often kept honey jars in the basement, so I chose to look for them." The kid replied truthfully. Stefan gave the boy a smile and a handshake. Soon, Stefan and his little friend left the study basement with a few jars of honey. It turned out that Billy, the boy who broke into the businessman's home, lived with his mother in a nearby town. It was clear that the boy was poor because of how he looked and the clothes he was wearing. Stefan made the boy some sandwiches right away, knowing that he was very hungry. Luckily, he stopped by the store on the way to the house and bought some food. After he grabbed the food, Billy gave Stefan a thankful look. Stefan no longer looked angry or dangerous. "And where is your dad, kid?" the owner of the house tried to sound casual when he asked. "Are your parents divorced?"
"I'm not sure where he is, to be honest. It's something my mom doesn't want to talk about. The doctor says she needs surgery because she is very sick, but we barely have enough money to buy food, so I do what I can," Billy replied, taking a big bite of his sandwich. Stefan felt pretty bad after hearing the boy's story. He could now see why Billy had broken into someone's home to get food. He felt that the least he could do for the kid at that moment is to take him home so he wouldn't get in trouble. The happiness in Billy's eyes assured him that he was doing the right thing. To be honest, Stefan liked taking care of the boy whose life was so hard for reasons he still wasn't sure about. The businessman packed Billy some food to take home to his mother when he was finally full. The man then turned on his Chevy and kindly opened the door for the boy. Pretty soon, Stefan and Billy were on their way to the town where the boy lived with his mother. They were able to enjoy the view on the way, which took about 40 minutes. Stefan felt terrible when Billy finally showed him the house where he lived. The man only had to look at the people living there to know they were very poor. Stefan thought to himself, "Oh wow, I guess things are really bad with Billy's mother." The boy ran ahead and opened the front door while the man got out of the car and looked around. Stefan went after Billy and ended up at his mom's house. The room had a strong smell of herbs and drugs. "Mom, I got home," the boy yelled from the door. "I brought some honey and food." "Thank you, sweetheart." Then she added, "Just promise me you're being careful." Stefan stopped because he wasn't sure what to do next. "Come on, sir," Billy said. "Let me introduce you to my mother." Stefan gave the boy a shy smile and carefully followed him. "Of course," Stefan said, trying to get ready for what he was about to see. But what he saw still shocked him. A thin, skinny woman lay on the bed. She tried to look better than she really was, to spare her son's feelings. Even someone who didn't know much about health conditions could tell that the woman was in very bad shape. In all his life, Stefan had never felt out of place. It made him feel bad to look at the woman in her eyes. But when Stefan took a better look at the woman, he thought he recognized the woman's face, and thought he had seen her before. Finally, Stefan realized what he had found. Being so in shock, he yelled out,
"Rachel, is that really you?" The woman on the bed looked at the guest with surprise and then said,
"No, you're wrong. Hi, my name is Monica. Rachel is my big sister."
Stefan turned pale and took a few steps towards the bed without meaning to. He was thinking to himself, she looks so much like Rachel. Stefan's mind became cloudy all of a sudden. Images and thoughts from the past came back to him in a logical chain that took him back to when he was 22 years old, and his life was full of unexpected events. He started remembering an event when he was driving down the main road that wet summer evening. It was just a mile and a half. His old Lincoln had stopped and refused to move again. He was on his way home from seeing his grandma. The bad luck was that he got caught in the rain. He really couldn't fix his engine in those conditions. The man couldn't ask other cars for help because the road was muddy and looked like it was empty. Now that Stefan knew things were lost, he sat in his car and tried to figure out what he could do. All of a sudden, he turned his head to the right and saw a road sign that led to the small town. Stefan thought to himself, maybe I should ask the locals for help. Stefan put his jacket on, pulled the hood over his head, and got out of the car. It was really windy outside, which made the heavy rain feel even worse. It poured rain on Stefan for about a quarter of a mile before he could get to the nearest house. The man went up to the building and knocked on the window several times. A short time later, he heard someone open the door, which made him feel better. After a second, the door opened and a small woman in her 20s stood on the threshold. She quietly moved out of the way when she saw the wet young man was standing in front of her and led him into the house. It came out that the stranger's name was Rachel. Her older sister went to the city for the day, leaving her at home by herself, while her mother was getting care at the hospital. After listening to Stefan's strange story, she took him to the bathroom and then made him a simple dinner and asked him to sit down. The young man was glad that Rachel turned out to be a nice friend who helped him forget about how nerve-wracking it was that his car was broken. Stefan thought to himself that he really liked talking to Rachel as he listened to her happy chatter. Without meaning to, Stefan felt sorry for this weak young woman with big, pure eyes. Both of them found a strange connection just by talking for a short period. Because of this, neither of the young people was shocked when they shared their first kiss. When Stefan and Rachel gave in to their feelings of love, they knew they might never see each other again. Later, he tried to find Rachel, but he never did. To be fair, he didn't really try that hard, because he was young and eager, and he was sure that he would meet many more people like that in his life. 7 years later, Stefan stood there and looked at Rachel's younger sister, who was fighting a very bad sickness with all her might. "Sorry about that, I was wrong. You look a lot like Rachel. Where did she go?" Stefan asked, nervously. Monica turned pale all of a sudden, and her breathing got rough and heavy. She finally got the nerve to ask Billy to leave the room and shut the door behind him. She then looked her new friend in the eyes and said,
"Rachel died 6 years ago while giving birth. The doctors couldn't do anything. Billy, he is actually her son."
"What do you mean? He is Rachel's son? That's not possible." "Oh God," he yelled, shaking with anger.
"I couldn't allow my late sister's son to end up in an orphanage, so I adopted him," she said.
Stefan was feeling dizzy. The businessman wasn't fully aware yet that Billy could be his son. When Stefan realized what was actually going on, he began to sweat a lot. The man thought Monica could see right through him, and that he had to tell her the truth. From her face, it was clear that the woman was in a lot of pain, but she tried hard not to show it and didn't say a word. Every time Stefan looked at Monica, he couldn't help but think she looked just like her sister. Stefan chose to help her younger sister, because he felt bad about how things went with Rachel. The man went home after saying goodbye to Monica and her son. It was important to the businessman to know how much money he needed to take out of his company to pay for Monica's surgery right away. Stefan called a hospital that could help Monica's condition right away. Stefan offered to pay for the surgery, and he didn't care that the amount of money for the surgery was pretty high. He put some of the money into the hospital's account to show that he was serious about what he was doing. Monica felt that there were no genuinely kind people in the world, so she didn't want to accept his help at first. She thought he must have a secret agenda. What shocked the woman even more was when she found out what the man really wanted. In fact, Billy's dad was standing right in front of her. He had caught his own son in the basement of his new house. Who knew that these people would meet in such an unexpected way? Stefan told Monica what happened 7 years ago and said he was sorry he couldn't find her sister back then. Maybe things would have been different if I had, the businessman said in a low voice as tears filled his eyes. Monica really did not think she would be able to forgive the person who left her pregnant sister alone and didn't make much effort to find her sister ever again. Still, she hugged Stefan and told him in a whisper,
"Promise me you'll look after Billy. You know, if I don't make it."
He got down on his knees and grabbed the woman's hand. He only wanted one thing at that moment, for Monica to get better and for the surgery to go well. Stefan was so scared on the day of the surgery that he could barely stand it. The man was ready to give up everything so that Billy's aunt could finally feel better. It turned out that Stefan's prayers were answered, and the next day he learned that the doctors had done the impossible and saved Monica's life. It goes without saying that the young businessman was very happy and relieved. He knew for the first time in his life that he had done something good. Once it was clear that Monica was doing better, Stefan started to visit her almost every day at the hospital and always brought her a bunch of roses. However, he couldn't help but notice how much she looked like her late sister. Stefan asked Monica to take him to the graveyard after Monica got out of the hospital, so he could ask the woman who gave birth to his son to forgive him. Stefan continued to visit Rachel's grave as often as he could. Sometimes he was bringing Billy with him. He and Monica eventually told Billy the entire truth about his real mother. Surprisingly, the boy took that information very graciously, and he was just happy he had his aunt in his life, and he had finally found his father. The three of them found a way to forgive each other and help each other through life. They eventually made themselves a family.